Hey everyone, this is Pastor Luis, and this short video is an extension of the sermon that I gave at New Life Community Church, focusing in on Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 6. We were looking at a classic text that says, Matthew chapter 7, verse 3, why are you looking at the speck in your brother's eye and not noticing the log in your own? And one of the conclusions that I came to preparing in my preaching is that this is a call to action. It's a call for one to be self-aware. And and just kind of thinking through and studying being self-aware, I came to some conclusions. Number one is that if I were to ask most of you, are you self-aware? Do you understand yourself? Do you know why you do what you do, why you say what you say? Most people would say, yeah, I have a good idea of why I am the way I am. But on further investigation, I think it's very rare that any of us understand ourselves. We're just not trained. It's not something that we practice. And the reason that I think that most of us are not self-aware is because of another truth that I've learned over the years, that each and every one of us has an inner lawyer. An inner lawyer who shields us, defends us, and protects us from any kind of criticism. See, our inner lawyer will always help us give a reason, an account, justification as to why we do what we do and why we say what we say and why we are the way we are. So this inner lawyer seems to work overtime, and he works for free, defending us from any real criticism of self. But part of growing and maturing spiritually, even just as an adult, is being self-aware. And in teaching this text in Matthew 7, I thought I want to ask the question, if this is so common, does it happen to Christians? Does it happen to pastors and elders and Sunday school teachers and moms and dads? Yes, the answer is yes. And the reason I can say that with some sort of confidence is because I looked at one of the heroes of the faith, my hero, the Apostle Paul. And focusing in, I took us as a church to the book of Acts chapter 9. And the thought was, if the Apostle Paul could have a lack of self-consciousness or self-awareness, then how much more might we have that same issue? And so what I want to do is take you back to the book of Acts chapter 9. And I was sharing how Saul, I don't know if you understood this, but he can be classified as Saul as an abuser. Now, someone asked me after the sermon, and they said, but Pastor, do you think that Saul actually murdered people? Because the text only says that he was trying to imprison them. Yeah, but what I try to do, and I did share that it was speculation, but when you look at the book of Acts chapter 7, at the stoning of Stephen, it says that they put the coats of those that were stoning Stephen at Saul's feet, and that he approved of his killing. He approved of it. So somewhere in the mind of young Saul, killing people was an option, and it was acceptable in the right circumstances. And no one had an inner lawyer like Saul, like the Apostle Paul. He even said himself, to the law I was blameless, I was righteous. And even here in the book of Acts chapter 9, remember how it begins? Chapter 9 verse 1 says, now Saul, still breathing threats and murder. You see, I don't think Saul would have killed anyone with his bare hands, because he was a man in authority. He was in control. And what he would have done is he would have been in the background. He would have been guiding and manipulating and moving, and he could have overseen the death of many people. And it says here he was threatening death. He was present at the killing of people. So that's why I say it's speculation, but I do classify Saul as an abuser. And I want you to understand something. God is against abuse. When I look at the Old Testament, the climax of the Old Testament is the Exodus. And Pharaoh was an ultimate abuser of God's people. And look what God did to him. And so here we have an abuser in the New Testament. And God's not going to hold back. He's going to intervene. And so what we see in Saul is an abuser. And what makes him an abuser? Look at verse 2. It says, verse 2, and asked for letters from him to the synagogue at Damascus, so that if found any belonging to the way, both men and women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. He was a man who was educated, cultured, religious, and he was in the in group with the Pharisees. In other words, this is a person with power. When a person is not self-aware, when a person has power, there's a high chance that they might want to abuse that power. Saul was an abuser, and he abused his power. He used his connections to the synagogue, to the Pharisees, and he got permission. So it was legal what he was doing to abuse others. And I want you to know that this translates. Many times what happens in abuse situations is someone is simply abusing their power. They're abusing their power as a husband, as a wife, as a parent, as a person with official capacity, pastor, elder, Sunday school teacher, policeman, counselor, teacher. People abuse power all the time. And so we need to be aware of where we have power and ask, are we abusing that? Are we abusing it? And remember, that inner lawyer is going to kick in. And it says here that as he's journeying, verse 3, he was approaching Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. Jesus is having an intervention. And when Jesus intervenes, he shares with him in verse 3, that there's a big light, there's a big voice. And by verse 4 it says, and he fell to the ground, and he heard a voice saying to him, and here's Jesus speaking, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Why are you persecuting me? When that word is used, persecuting, that means that he is damaging, he is abusing, he is causing harm to others. And I want you to understand that at least this is, you could call it a Christian thing. Many of us are the victims of abuse, but God, as our high priest, oftentimes, as the sacrifice that God has given, he puts himself in our place. He identifies with our sufferings. And he says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? You've hurt all these people, but ultimately it's me. I am the ultimate victim in this situation. And he confronts, he intervenes, and he stops Saul and he says, why are you persecuting me? Now, when God asks you a question, you need to answer it. But you notice in verse 5 where the answer was supposed to be, instead of responding, Saul says, who are you? Who are you? And I can almost see and sense the confusion in Saul's voice and his reaction. He's like, what are you talking about? Persecuting who? Saul doesn't get it. And folks, I don't know how many times I've seen it in people. I tell them that this is a situation, and they're like, no, I don't see it. I don't agree with you. No, you're wrong. Many times abusers will be that way. They are not self-aware. They don't know that they're doing this. They feel justified in every action. They'll defend themselves vehemently. And even if God tells them, they don't respond. And it's here, the issue of abuse, I would love to talk more about it. And I want you to know I want to talk more about these issues. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to determine if I do more discussions and sermons and messages on these issues of relationships, abuse, and overcoming pain and suffering. I'll do that depending on your reactions to this video and commentaries below. If this is just something that no one's really interested in, don't really say anything below, then we'll leave it at this. We'll pray that this is a blessing. But if it is something that you want to hear more about and investigate, recovering from pain in relationships, recovering from death, understanding ourselves, then let me know in the comments below so that I know that there's an audience for it, and I'll do my best to provide it. So as we're looking at this text, we recognize that Saul has been asked a question, but he doesn't give a response. I want to jump in on this for a reason. Many of us have been hurt in our lives. We have suffered. Things have happened. And what happens here is that Jesus gives the number one question of a victim. He says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? As I was reading this text, I couldn't help in my mind just hearing the many voices of people asking, why? Why did you leave me? Why did you not love me? Why did you cheat on me? Why did you steal from me? Why did you hurt me? Why did you say that about me? Why? Why is the question that most victims are constantly asking. And what I noticed is when God asked why, Saul didn't give a response, which leads me to another little thing I wanted to share with you. There's a danger in asking why too long. Yes, initially we all ask why. It's part of our nature. But you don't want to stay there. I remember reading an article, and I don't remember the title of the article or who wrote it, but they said that asking or trying to understand why things happened is being like in a little gerbil's wheel, just running in circles and getting nowhere. And the truth is that God, just like he said, he gives us an example here. Jesus gives us an example. He says, why? He doesn't stay there. By verse 6, he moves on. He's not sitting asking why or demanding answers or waiting for an answer. He says in verse 6, but rise and enter the city, and it be told you what you must do. I'm going to tell you what God just did. He didn't stay or continue asking why. We need to learn something here. See, what happens with us when we go through pain and suffering, death, a broken relationship, divorce, we are constantly asking why. We're hungry for answers. When you study the steps or the stages of grief after broken relationships and things, one of the first stages is demanding answers. And the second one is denial. And so many times when something has gone wrong, we want to know why. But here's the problem with why. Here's a few problems with why. Number one, and this is the majority of the time, there is no answer. God is not demanding an answer because there isn't an answer to be given. Folks, sometimes we want to know why, but there is no answer. And if you just get stuck there, asking why over and over, what happens to us is we get emotionally and sometimes even spiritually stuck. And we can't move on. Because we want to know, we want to understand. But folks, listen to me. Sometimes you have to accept that there is no answer. The second problem is because sometimes you'll actually get an answer. But the problem with the answer is that either one, it won't satisfy you, or two, you won't understand it. That makes no sense. And so you'll continue to spin saying, you're lying to me, you're lying to me, that's not true, or that just can't be. And you're trying to bring rationale into an answer that will never make sense to you. And once again, you get stuck there. And here's the real problem, because sometimes there is no answer, sometimes you're unsatisfied with the answer, and that leads to the third problem. In the absence of information or understanding, what tends to happen with many of us, and this is a natural type thing, you can't control it, we go into blaming. We'll blame, and because we don't have facts, we generalize. That's just how men are. That's just how women are. That's what this ethnic group is. That's just what people do. And we're stuck in a place where we can't trust people anymore. Or we blame ourselves. We blame ourselves, and you say, it was my fault. Why did I say this? Why did I do that? And before long, you are blaming yourself, and you're the problem. None of this is healthy. See, God doesn't stay. He doesn't continue asking why or looking for why. He changes the question. By verse 6, he doesn't stay asking why. He goes to what? Saul is needing to know what happens next. And in verse 6, God tells him what to do. And I think this is the answer. It's changing the question from why to what. I shared with you that I was going to share something personal, and the only reason I share this is because it's how it's impacted me. One of the things that has most impacted my life is the loss of my mother. And I can't tell you how many times that just played on my mind. I felt that I had been unjustly treated by God. That for a time, I was even mad at my own mother, thinking, why did you abandon me? How dare you go off and die on me? As ridiculous as that sounds, it was in my brain. And I remember having a conversation with God once, and it was just one of the most powerful nights in my life where I was trying not to blame God, trying not to argue, but I wanted to know, why did you allow it, God? Why did you feel that was the best idea? How in your God mind did you think that was the best for me? If this is love, I'd hate to see what hate looks like. And it was a scary conversation I had with God because I wanted to know why. And it was through my reading of the Bible, prayer, and just listening to good counsel that I learned to go from why to what. So instead of asking, why did my mom die? Why was I abandoned at such an early age? Why did these, I went from why to what, and I began to ask questions like this. What happened? That was a powerful question. And by the way, I recommend that question to all of you, regardless of the situation. What happened? And so I had to give an answer. What happened? My mother died. That is a powerful moment. Because as long as I was asking why, I couldn't move ahead. And the moment I asked what happened, I began to accept what has happened. It wasn't a bad dream. It wasn't something that was just out in the spiritual. No, this happened. And I have to accept that my mother is gone. That was the first step. So I continued with the what questions. What happened? My mother died. Well, what would she have wanted for my life? Well, she would have wanted me to be happy. She would have wanted me to love, to be loved, to have family, to be healthy, to enjoy the time that God has given me on this earth. She would have wanted the best for me. That's helpful. Well, what would she have wanted from me? What would she have wanted from me? She would have wanted me to know that she loves me. She always will. She would have wanted me to tell my children about her. She would have wanted me to never forget her. She would have wanted me to have hope. She would have wanted me to know God. You see, and as I'm going through these what questions, why keeps me spinning, what gives me a road ahead? What do I need? Well, I need to talk about it. I need to help other people through it. I need to rest. I need to find faith. I need to celebrate her and remember her. I need to live my life. You notice how what questions help me move ahead. And I want to recommend that, going from why to what. And it's not just in like death, but it could be the death of a relationship. Maybe you've broken up. Maybe you've been divorced. Again, why did that happen? Why did they cheat on me? Why didn't they love me? Why didn't they keep their word? We were talking about marriage and now this happened. Why? And again, the same things apply. Sometimes there's no answers. Sometimes the answers won't satisfy us. And most of the time we end up blaming ourselves. I'm not good enough. I didn't do this right. I'm such an idiot. Why did I not see this? And next thing you know, you're blaming yourself. But in the same way, there has to be questions that start with what? Again, what happened? We broke up. We are divorced. Okay. What do I need right now? I need to rest. I need to talk about this. I need to pray. I need to talk with God. What do you need? Then begin to think about the relationship itself. What attracted you to that person in the first place? Because see, this is part of the being self-aware. You're going to learn a lot here. What attracted me to this person? Or maybe you've already had various relationships. What attracted you to all those persons? Are there things they have in common? Maybe we need to talk about that. And not only that, not only what attracted you to them, but what annoyed you. So now, many times in a relationship, there are things that annoy you, small little things. They're small, but because you're in a relationship and you're in love and you're all excited, you don't pay attention to those small things that annoy you. Later on, we call those red flags. What were those small things? Was it the jokes that they shared? The facial expressions they used? The mumbling under their breath? Was it the way they would punish you in small little ways? Would they withhold love? Would they withhold conversation? Would they not talk to you? Would they shut the door and not let you in? I mean, there could be 100 things. Go back and look. What was it that attracted you to them? What was it that annoyed you about them? And this is going to help you in moving ahead. It's super important. Here's another question coming out of a relationship, a divorce, whatever. If I could go back in time, what would I do different? If I could go back in time, what would I do different? You see, all these whats, again, they're not keeping you in the why wheel circling. They're helping you move forward. They're helping you see that there is a future and it is here. Sometimes pain and suffering, it's a cry for action. It's a time to move ahead. Whys do not help. Whats do help. Now, I want you to understand the last thing I'll say about whys is, and I hope you understand what I'm saying. The answer to many problems is rarely in the problem. The answer to many problems is rarely in the problem. Let me put it another way. Everything in life is energy. And whatever you give your energy to, it grows. Have you ever told yourself, I'm not going to be nervous? And then you're nervous. I'm not going to worry. And then you worry. I'm not going to think about this. It's all you think about. Whatever you give energy to, it grows. You don't want to give energy to your pain and suffering. Yes, you want to move ahead, but you don't want to continue to define your life, everything you do, to that pain and suffering. You need to go from the whys to the whats and let your life move forward. And about that, you are the one writing the story of your life. No one else has the power to write it for you. Don't give that power away. Begin to envision a version of yourself that is healthy, that is strong, that is happy. There is a version of you that's better than where you are now. It's where you want to be. That version of you is real, it exists, and it can happen. But you have to move ahead, and it'll change your life. Folks, that's all I'm going to say about this for right now, and I hope that what I've shared is a blessing to you. I think the video is a lot longer than I had promised. I'm sorry about that, but it is what it is. And if you want to continue to have these kind of conversations, because this little conversation alone, oh my goodness, I was tempted to go like 4 different ways. We could have easily made this a 3-hour conversation. If it's something that you think is helpful and it'll bless you, please let me know in the comments below. And like I said, if not, then we'll just continue to move ahead. For now, I just want to remind you that I'm always pulling for you. I pray that this was a blessing for you, and we'll see you soon.